the European Climate Initiative, who have benefited for years now from grants given on a competitive basis by EUKI for Central and Eastern Europe member states and countries in the region to develop projects dedicated to combating climate change and reaching climate neutrality. My name is Radu Dudau. I'm the president of EPG. EPG is a think tank specializing on energy and climate policy based in Bucharest. And for today, we are having an exquisite lineup of speakers. After a brief welcome speech that will be given by Mrs. Cristina-Dora Raiciu, Deputy Head of the Economic Section in the German Embassy, we will receive two keynote speeches, first by Mr. Berthold Goeke, who is Deputy Director General for National and European Climate Policy in the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Actions in Germany. And then by Mrs. Oana Ozmen, Secretary of the Committee for Industries and Services of the Romanian Chambers of Deputies. The speeches will then be followed by a panel discussion that I'm really looking forward to, which is going to be moderated by my colleague Mihnea Catuti, the head of research at EPG, and then a very good lineup of panelists, Mrs. Elena Popescu, Deputy Director, General Director, for Energy Policy in the Energy Ministry, Ms. Mara Roman, Deputy Head at the representation of the European Commission in Bucharest, Audrey Mathieu, Policy Officer at the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action, and then Mr. Mihai Stoica, Executive Director of 2 Celsius, another Bucharest-based think tank. We will then have 20 minutes actually of Q&As moderated by Mihnea as well. And we will wrap up at 12:30. Before we start with the welcoming speech by Cristina-Dora Raiciu, just one more minute for me to show, to lay out the ground rules for our today's interaction. For questions to the panel, please use the Q&A function. You can pose questions at any time during the panel speeches, but they will be answered in the Q&A section. And finally, the discussion is being recorded and will be posted online on EPG's and EUKI's YouTube channels after the event. Without further ado, I'm sure we're going to have a very interesting event, and I'm inviting now Cristina-Dora Raiciu to say a few words on behalf of the German Embassy in Bucharest.
Good morning, everyone. Dear guests, distinguished speakers, thank you very much, Radu and EPG, for the invitation to address a few words today. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to take part in this EUKI networking event. We at the German Embassy have known Radu Dudau and his team for a long time now, And we also follow the project finance through the European Climate Initiative in Romania. Therefore, I'm very happy that I can be here today. The topic is also very prominent and high on the political agenda. Romania has already taken important steps towards decarbonization. At the end of last year, it adopted the law of decarbonization of the energy sector with the target of phasing out coal and lignite power production by 2032. And it has an ambitious resilience and recovery plan with allocation on measures that support the green transition with ambitious reforms promoting sustainable transport and energy efficiency. At the same time, we could observe that several tenders for new wind and solar capacity for energy storage system have been organized, and several more are in the pipeline. Romania has also set its own target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030, and is currently working on its long-term strategy. The hydrogen strategy should be also published for public consultation soon. So as you can see, there are a lot of things happening now. Therefore, any input coming from the civil society, from the business side in general, events, projects that generate interest for the topic, raise awareness among the population, and more dialogue amongst all stakeholders are more than welcome. I use this opportunity to mention the initiative of the German Federal Foreign Office, the Climate Fund, which can be used by us, by German diplomatic and trade missions abroad for local project calls with a view to encourage the green transition. The potential for collaboration between Romanian and German stakeholders is very high, not only in the development of strategies and policies and in the conception of support programs, but also when it comes to implementing them. Just to give you a short example, in Germany, any discussion on electricity is inevitably tied to the efforts to expand the transmission infrastructure. Probably most of you already know this. Most of Germany's wind capacity is located in the north. Big industrial consumers tend to be located in the south. And the plans that to expand this transmission infrastructure have faced resistance from local communities, with farmers protesting against plans to accelerate the grid expansion, and bird protection activists filing lawsuits against the project developers. In Romania, we don't see this type of public discussion, but rather the danger that the plans to extend and modernize the grid could be delayed by unpredictable legislation on distribution of energy that is affecting the market players. While the necessity to protect the consumer is justified, without strengthening the infrastructure, we will not be able to use these alternative energy resources if we cannot connect them to the grid. Therefore, we believe that impact analysis, long-term strategy, and planning, which involve the stakeholders as early as possible in the process, are important for reaching the climate goals. And we particularly welcome that EPG and the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action are now organizing this networking event dedicated to the Romanian community. On behalf of the German Embassy, I wish you all very interesting discussions and contacts, and I'm looking forward to the keynote speeches and the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cristina, for your encouraging outlook on Romania's climate action. Let's hope the things you mentioned will come to fruition. And also thank you for the steady support the German Embassy has shown to our projects. Let us now move to the keynote speech by Mr. Berthold Goeke, Deputy General Director for National and European Climate Policy in the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action. Mr. Goeke, the floor is yours. We are honored to have you today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dudau. Good morning, everybody, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. At first, let me thank you for this kind invitation. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to share with you some thoughts about the importance of national long-term strategies and the role of the European Climate Initiative in this context. Before I will come to this topic, let me start with a little reminder from science, which again unanimously issued a dire warning of the unmanageable consequences of unchecked climate and biodiversity crisis. Since the report by the IPCC clearly shows that without countermeasures, we are racing towards a global warming of 2.8 degrees. But we still have a tight window of time, and if we act now, climate action can be effective. So, dear colleagues, this once again adds to the list of numerous reasons why we need to speed up the green transition, including energy security issues and geostrategic economic reasons to ensure an European Union-wide competitive, sustainable industry and economy as a whole. As you know, the European Union has set itself the goal of achieving net greenhouse gas neutrality by 2050 at the latest. Together, Europe is determined to set a good example. With the ambitious Fit for 55 package, the Union has also set itself a framework for implementation until 2030. In addition to the EU-wide relevant instruments, such as the emission trading system and the Social Climate Fund, every national effort and contribution to mitigation count for reaching our common climate target. All of us, all member states, are asked to contribute to our common goal. In this context, national long-term strategies play an important role. LTS are at national level our compass on the way to climate neutrality. Defining a pathway to climate neutrality requires farsightedness and is not an easy task, but it gives us resilience in the mid and long term. In addition, national long-term strategies are an important reference framework to the EUKI projects, and that is also very important. With the European Climate Initiative, we would like to contribute to jointly solving the challenges that lie ahead of all of us and to strengthening civil society's commitment to climate protection. With EUKI, the European Union pursues climate action in a spirit of solidarity. We want EUKI with cross-border corporations to contribute to reaching the goals of the European Green Deal. Cross-border cooperation helps creating better and sometimes mutual understanding. It also supports and can help improving European processes and agreements. EUKI can have an impact, especially for capacity for civil society in Central Eastern Europe. This program, ladies and gentlemen, is intended to provide strengthening the bottom-up commitment of civil society, local administrations, or non-profit companies in Europe to climate action. An open EUKI call for ideas has been held annually since its establishment in 2017. As you know, it focuses on investment measures supporting regional perspectives and a simplified application procedure. Last year, the budget of the EUKI call accounted for almost 12 million euros. With 38 projects implemented in Romania and 20 Romanian organizations, the EUKI portfolio in Romania is one of the biggest. Most projects are undertaken in the field of energy and climate policy, transformation of mobility, and efficiency of buildings. In the course of the latest EUKI call, we have received more than 10 project applications with Romanian civil society participation, which is a pleasing news. We want to continue the EUKI in the years to come. The quality of the projects also depends on the awareness of the program and the networking with the Romanian government and other European partners. The EUKI supports projects in networking activities and competence and capacity building. So, thanks for coming this morning. It is great to see you all here as multipliers for the EUKI program. With that, I wish you a successful conference. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goeke, for reminding us about the importance of consistent climate action and also re-emphasizing the critical role EUKI plays in the region in supporting projects dedicated to climate action and, as you said, improving the capacity of civil society and administration as well. With that, let me now invite to the microphone Mrs. Oana Marciana Ozmen, Secretary of the Committee for Industries and Services in the Chambers of Deputies of the Romanian Parliament.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Radu, for the introduction. Distinguished guests, I'm honored to be part of this conference today because when we discuss about climate neutrality, we know Romania is involved in this project, and we already update our legislation when we discuss about energy efficiency for buildings. And what I understand, last week, the EU Parliament adopted draft measures to increase the rate of renovation and reduce energy consumption and greenhouse gas emission. It's important to continue, not just update the legislation, but to be sure with all the funds what we have now, we will use it in order to have this rate of energy performance from the buildings. Also, we already plan to continue to work on energy efficiency and clean hydrogen consumption legislation. We registered in the Parliament the first project, which is dedicated to use hydrogen, green hydrogen, and also low carbon. So Romania made that steps in order to make sure that climate plan will be true in the future. For this reason, what is important is to use European funding, what is important instrument now, and we need to use it for decarbonization on the industrial, transport, and agriculture sector. Also, it's important to continue to have that campaign to inform the society, also the stakeholder during the transition about the benefits of the this kind of project what we develop now in Romania when we discuss about energy efficiency. We need to explain them why it's important to use when you renovate the buildings, also the public buildings, to renovate the materials, constructed material, which are extremely friendly with environment. And also, we must be aware, adapt and implement project starting with best practice because we know Germany is a country which invests a lot of funds for solution for energy efficiency, and also they have a best practice in terms of hydrogen policy and energy efficiency. Yes, I will announce you is a conference in Stuttgart which EUKI will organize, and I will attend with that conference. And I will be interesting to discuss with the experts from Germany about the policy, what they use it when we discuss to increase the number of projects which are dedicated to decarbonization for the industrial sector and also the agriculture. Radu, you know already I'm involved in that project, and what is important is Romania made that possible because we have a very good relation between Parliament and between public institution and the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of Development also, because they use always they always use that funds to be sure the project about energy efficiency will become reality here in Romania. Thank you for inviting me, and I will wish you to have a success conference today.
Thank you as well, Oana, and I must say you were probably the most instrumental Romanian MP in promoting decarbonization legislation, and also one of the few examples of MPs that consult on a regular basis with experts and also learn from European best practices. This is something we would like to see multiplied in the Romanian Parliament. Thank you. And with this, we're wrapping up the segment of introductory speeches. I'm now passing the moderation to my colleague Mihnea Catuti. We are we're doing surprisingly well with time, just a couple of minutes behind. Mihnea, to you now and to the exquisite panel that's coming up.
Fantastic, Radu, thank you very much. I will not let you go away, however, because I will invite you to wrap up the discussions and make a summary of what we will discuss in this fantastic panel lineup that we have today. Just a quick reminder before we start, if anyone in the attendance has questions, please use the Q&A function to address them. I will pick them up and direct them to the panelists in the Q&A section, which will be after the initial introductions. It was fantastic to have the introductory remarks from all the speakers we've had so far. Now I hope we're going to get into a conversation about the planning that's necessary, the climate governance framework that Romania is working on for meeting its greenhouse gas emissions reductions targets. I'm hoping that we get to see how the country has basically evolved and has taken climate change more seriously. In 2022, Romania has adopted legislation to phase out coal, which was quite groundbreaking legislation, which I think will make the planning process in the LTS, the NECP, not necessarily easier, but clearer in terms of the objectives that need to be assumed. It's important to mention, and this is a thread that I think will keep throughout the conversations today, that the political economy context of Romania, and not just Romania, but of the region, needs to be taken into account when discussing decarbonization. Romania is a country that needs to simultaneously decarbonize its economy, but at the same time be involved in the convergence process, the economic convergence process with the rest of the EU. And Romania has shown, I think, the capability to do both. We've slashed emissions by more than half since 1990. And the GDP per capita of Romania increased from 26% of the EU average to 75% of the EU average. So I think it's a success story, but it's a lot of work to be done, which is what we're here to talk about today. And without further ado, I'm going to invite the first panelist, which is Ms. Elena Popescu, who's General Director for Energy Policy and the European Green Deal in the Ministry of Energy. Ms. Popescu, you have the floor. Please give us any insights on the planning that Romania is going to publish in the coming months.
Thank you very much. First of all, good morning to everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to this discussion. Indeed, the long-term strategy and the revision of reporting and the revision of National Integrated Energy and Climate Plan are yes, the most important, I would say, planning documents for each member state in Europe nowadays. So Romania, as you said, Mihai, it's going to implement the decarbonization policies adopted at the European level, but in the same time has a role to play in Southeast Europe, being at the border of the European Union, eastern border of the European Union, which in the last time was most impacted by the war in Ukraine. So this war in Ukraine showed us that yes, the competitiveness, the decarbonization, implementing new technologies are very important, but it's not less important the energy security. And also a part of the energy security is a diversification of energy sources, because dependency on only one sources shown us that it's could lead to weaponizing the energy, which from my point of view, and the energy experts, from the person from the energy system considers it's not less a crime as degrading the environment. We are involved in indeed in elaboration, finalization, I would say, of long-term strategy, because we are delayed on this process. Romania, we are working as a leading role as Minister of Environment, but we support the Minister of Environment in this respect. We are working together with DG Reform, with the consultant, and in the near future we will have the final document on LTS. I can inform you that it's important to know that we have analyzed the 3 scenarios, and we choose the most ambitious one, climate neutrality scenario. This was not an easy decision. It was a tough decision. We have evaluated the possibilities and what is best for Romania. What is the role could be the role of Romania in this part, in this region of Europe, but also in Europe at a whole. So we decided to detail this scenario. Of course, because 2030 is not very far away, and in terms of energy is very near. We decided to evaluate the results for the intermediate targets for 2030, to evaluate these targets with all the ministries and at the sectorial level, and make necessary adjustments. But the goal for 2050 is climate neutrality. So we have very ambitious target also for 2030, and the targets from LTS will be inputs for revision, are inputs for revision of NECP. So we have started working on this. As you know, as we are finalizing the results from LTS, from this the ambitious scenario, try to start working on a revision of NECP. Yes, for Romania, one of the main important decision and impact on NECP, revision NECP, is a phase out of coal. So it's a decision by law. In 2030, with 2032, with the ecologization of mines. So altogether, the coal will be phased out for good. But I don't know if many people know that, in fact, the phase out of coal, not phase out, I will call, but the shut out, the close of the coal units will take place in 2026. By end of 2026, because it's in agreement, it's in according with the restructuring plan of Oltenia, because in Romania, the main producer of coal, it's Oltenia, is providing 24% of our energy output. So this 2026, this year, put pressure, a lot of pressure on the energy system, because we have to replace those capacities with the new ones, and we want to make this shift from the coal to renewables, but maintaining the energy security, and not only for Romania, but Romania is also responsible to ensure to participate in the energy security in the region. We have Moldova case, we have Ukrainian case. So the countries, the member states around us, are also I will not speak on their behalf, but difficulties is for everybody, for all the member states in this transition process. Nothing is easy. We are aware, but for Romania having this responsibility, also for Moldavia, for Ukraine being at the border, I think it's even stronger, this challenge. So what we have in this revision NECP, so we start with the decision of phase out. As I said, we replace these coal facility units with renewables, and but we need also gas. This, I know, this is not in line with the German, because I saw, and I would say, I forgot to say hello to my colleague from the Investment Committee on Modernization Fund, Berthold. Yes, so I know the German position is not in favor of on gas, but we have to take care of the energy security, and to be sure that our energy systems remain stable while we are under this fast decarbonization of our energy system. Because, as I said, we are fasting, we are speeding up this phasing out of coal. And this increase of renewables is, of course, in Romania. It's very obvious in our planning. We are developing, we have instruments, tools, financing tools, instruments. We are developing a contract for difference mechanism to develop 10 gigawatt until 2030, 2035 to implement it. But I mean, the financing, it will be until 2030 as we have the time that we have money from a modernization fund. And we use these two instruments, in fact, for contract for difference compared with modernization fund for supplying the liquidity fund. This is quite innovative instrument, financing instruments for renewable, dedicated for wind and solar. Sorry, and we hope that this year, in the next month, we will put in place this mechanism, and we will have the first call for renewables in the first quarter of next year for 1,500 megawatts at the beginning, and then after 1 year 2,000, and then after 2 years 3,000 until 10 megawatts until 2030. So this is only for modernization, from modernization fund, but we have also for 3,000 megawatts from RRP, and we expect that our capacity in renewables will be until 2035 additionally 15 gigawatts. So in this current context, we need infrastructure to enforce and to develop electricity infrastructure, but we need also, as I said, to ensure backup for renewables and stability of the grid. We need also gas, and Romania has gas. So is no case to rely on Russian gas or other supplies gas. Our dependency on external sources is only 20%, and with our own resources that we are using, we intend to use, and we are using, we can cover this, and we can also supply the rest of Europe with our own resources. This is one idea that we are really support, that we first of all, before we are going to the third country, we have to use our own European resources. We have to put on table all the resources. I think this will be the wise approach from Europe, from European policies. So we also, as I said, diversify the resources, emphasize the grid, as I said, and some news area that we are developing in our NECP or revision on NECP, it's the production and utilization of hydrogen. Romania is considering to use not only green hydrogen, nevertheless, we support and promote green hydrogen production, but in this transition period, we want to rely also on low carbon hydrogen, because we have two economic sectors which need decarbonization urgent, which is not two, three, I would say. It's transport, industry, agricultural, so not speaking about the energy sector. Also the development infrastructure for biofuels will be other area which will detail in this revision on NECP. The development of CCUS, as I said, that we have industry which will rely first on this hydrogen, low carbon hydrogen, until they will use renewable hydrogen, and until we can develop the infrastructure and the storage capacities for green hydrogen. So storage capacity, it's another area of our in our revision, which will be prosumers, heating pumps, the area of heating and cooling and development of renewable in heating and cooling is other area of development in our revision of NECP. And as maybe all you know, Romania is relying also in this decarbonization process in nuclear. So I know that for Germany this is not a very nice point, but we are Europe, a diversified Europe. So we are not the same. So I think the unity and the cost effectiveness of our economy comes from our diversities. So Romania, it's as I know, wants to develop classical units, but also is looking to SMR, to new technologies, which will provide not only electricity, but we will accommodate best with intermittent and flexible energy system, while we are increasing renewables in a very significant way. So also SMR. So what can I say? We are working with a consultant with DigiReform. The most probably the governance structure will be at the Ministry of Energy for NECP. So it's a great responsibility because there are responsibilities for all the ministries, all the authorities. Each sector has its own obligation and responsibilities, but we hope that we can manage all of these challenges, and by 30th of June to be able to provide the revision of NECP. So it's a very busy time, lots of challenges. I wish you a very fruitful and constructive discussions, because the subjects are the most interesting, I would say now. So again, thank you for invitation, and I wish you good luck in all of your activities. Thank you.
Ms. Popescu, thank you very much for intervention. It was a bit over time, but it was fantastic because there was so much to unpack there. I wanted to hear everything you had to say. I think there were some very important points you highlighted there. The first was energy security, which I think that it's something that Central and Eastern Europe, in a way, managed to put on the EU agenda back when the energy union discussions were being had. And now it's a sort of like a moment of reckoning for the region about the importance that this has, and how the objectives of the EU, which Mara will tell us about in a moment, are not just about climate change, but also about affordable energy and about security of supply. It was fantastic to hear that the LTS Romania is aiming for climate neutrality. That was one of my follow-up questions. It's fantastic to hear that we will follow the higher level of ambitions when it comes to climate policies. About what's going to be in the NECP, there's a lot to unpack there. Just a very quick follow-up question. You mentioned that it is aligned very well with the modeling for the LTS. How aligned is it with the Repower EU plans, with the new targets for 45% potentially for renewable energy? What sort of targets for that are we expecting from the NECP?
Yes, here in the final target is not adopted yet. It will be 40 or 45 or between, somewhere in between. In our NECP, the renewables, what we have from LTS. So now we are developing in NECP to see how we can reach that target. It's 37% in 2030 and 91.5% in 2050. So I really say that these are very ambitious targets, not easy to reach. Now we have to see all the measures and the targets at the sectorial level, and to have discussions with all the authorities, because it's their responsibilities. Minister of Energy or Minister of Environment cannot respond to the measures and which the Ministry of Transport, for example, has to implement, or the industry has to implement. So we will have discussions with each part, with the stakeholders from the market, when we will have some concrete figures and measures, and we will see what it will result, because from the discussions. But what we have now from LTS is 36.4% for 2030. We envisage to have, because for 2030, as I said, it's very near. We have to be realistic, but we hope that after 2030, the measures will be more aggressive than now. Because now the most aggressive measure is the one that we have adopted already, which is phase out coal. We have to see how we can meet those challenges that impact of closing of units in 2026, because after 2026 it will remain only the reserves capacities, which will be used, in a very special situation. If at our border it's happening something worse than it is already. But the 2026 is very near, so we have to see how we can tackle these challenges, and then after 2030 maybe it will be more aggressive measures. So
understood. Yeah, thank you very much for that answer as well. And if the targets are still being discussed, then I always hope that input from civil society and our organizations will also be welcome in the process. We at EPG for sure will publish modeling results that we have done as well, to complement, if we can, the fantastic work that you are doing.
Thank you very much.
All right, if you'll still have a bit of time for the Q&A, I'll maybe put some questions then, but until then, I'm sorry for making you wait, Ms. Audrey Mathieu, who's the policy officer at the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action. You have the floor for the German perspective on this.
No, thank you very much. No, thank you very much for the opportunity also to exchange here on those important matter, to hear the Roman colleagues also what is for the moment very important, highlighting also the security of supply, which is very important, and regarding the energy mix, it's for the moment being maybe not a bad thing that it's in all MS hands what we are doing with our mix. In Germany, our formal NLTS will be adjusted accordingly. Also, the process is also ongoing in Germany for the update. Regarding the NECP, Mrs. Popescu mentioned, it is true to remind that some targets, some elements are missing. So we still are waiting for the red results, and but also the APBD, the European Performance Building Directive, is pending. So with a look at the time, maybe I can focus my statement on governments and share with you some aspects of German governance framework and planning instrument. As you know, in Germany, we have the climate neutrality target of 2045 anchored in our national climate protection law. So allow me a few words on this key instrument for the long-term planning, this federal climate protection law. I would like to highlight at least 3 elements of the law. Firstly, this law marks the end of vague, non-binding goals. We have binding targets for 2030, 2040, and 2045, so respectively -65, -88, and net zero. This is also very challenging for us regarding the energy crisis, but the energy crisis is also an opportunity to faster speed up the energy transition. in the law, if necessary, to meet EU or international obligation, the ambition of the binding national targets can be raised, but it cannot be lowered. There is no backsliding possible. I think it's an important aspect. The second aspect of the law I'd like to mention is the governance and the tracking of actions. This is very important, we think. The law provides for a precise governance system for the implementation and pursuit of the 2030 climate target, which itself is defined sector by sector. So this makes the different ministry more accountable for emissions in the sectors for which they are responsible. Emissions from energy, industry, buildings, transport, and agriculture sectors are tracked and revised annually. This is very helping in monitoring. So, sometimes it's also crunchy when you have a situation like a Russian aggression in Ukraine. So if a sector deviates from the planned emission reduction path, it means the government must intervene immediately and the responsible ministry must submit an immediate action program to reduce the sector's gap. So the law sets a quite robust framework to our view. And in addition, that would be my third point, maybe to put it also in for the audience today. We have an expert council for climate issues, which was established in 2019. And its task is to verify the assumptions underlying expected emissions reductions before any future ministerial climate action plan is adopted. And furthermore, this National Expert Council, this is kind of advisory body, publishes an assessment every 2 years on the development of emissions and the emission trends and on the measures also so far in place. That for the framing, I think it's very interesting also to me to hear on the program in Romanian what is ongoing. I think it's very encouraging, also the outlook, but I know and I hear this is quite challenging. I feel you, if I may put it this way. Maybe a last aspect on the climate protection law, because we are talking about civil society also here today, and on the EUKI. The German climate protection law integrates stakeholder and citizens engagement, such as some forms of consultation or direct public comments, for example, on draft versions of the law. It's foreseen in the framework also. Maybe I stop here because I look at the time and I see Mihnea is nervous.
No worries at all. But no, thank you very much for sharing this and basically presenting this key instrument that you have in Germany, which is the National Climate Protection Law. Now that the LTS in Romania will finally be published, we hope that this type of an instrument at some point can be adopted here as well. I think it was very important that you mentioned not just the role of the expert council and that civil society plays in the process, but also that there's no backsliding, that once some targets are set, you cannot go back on them. And I think this is something that's also important to understand perhaps in the Romanian context, which looks towards Germany quite often when it comes to climate action, to energy policy, and so on. So it's great to hear that even from things like coal phase out, it is here to stay as it is in Romania, as Ms. Popescu has presented earlier. Just a quick follow-up question about cooperation, because there are these good practice examples. There are also different perspectives that need to be exchanged. I'm just curious from your experience, but also in general, how do you think the cooperation among national governments can be enhanced to achieve the ambitious climate protection commitments in the EU? What can we do better, or what are we doing already that works?
I think this kind of exchange today is already very helpful, the first place to hear. But in that regard, I think also the EUKI program is helpful because, as Mr. Goeke already mentioned, this cross-border cooperation, it helps creating better understanding. This is very important, and that EU member states can collaborate in developing their long-term strategy, energy and climate plans also by identified shared interest and exchanges good practice. as we are doing today, I think this this is like the knowledge transfer, the knowledge sharing, the key elements. And I think the EUKI can play a role in capacity building in also in the Romanian civil society, active in the climate and environmental policy space. The grants enable Romanian organizations to develop their voice and to participate actively in shaping the policy. So I hear this morning the Romanian representative, Mrs. Ozmen, also, we are not sure if it's well known what is coming upon us. Yeah, what does 26 means for also for the public, for the population. So this kind of awareness raising, this is where some program like EUKI can help. Thank you.
Great, yeah, thank you very much. And we have Mihai Stoica here on the panel as well, who will come in a second to give a bit more of a civil society perspective as well. But before that, we have with us Oana Roman, who is Deputy Head of the European Commission representation in Romania and the head of the political section. Ms. Roman, we've heard a lot about what's happening in Romania, about some good practices in climate governance in Germany, but it feels like in this period, most of the conversations, or a lot of conversation, is coming out of the EU level because of the many things that have happened in the past 2-3 years. So could you please give us a bit of a perspective of how things are seen from Brussels, what has been done over the past year, and what should we expect going ahead?
Thank you, Mihnea, and hello to everybody. Quite a task on me on giving a look back and a bit a look forward, because a lot has happened, and I'm also looking at the time. So I've been a bit trying to condense my speech.
We can chip in a few minutes from the Q&A. Don't worry, no worries.
Good. So thanks a lot for this invitation and the interesting conversation. Indeed, 2022 was a year of significant developments and shifts in the European energy landscape, mostly driven by Russia's unprovoked and unjustified war against Ukraine, but which came in a context of a pre-existing energy price volatility. So we have seen that last year events, as Elena was also mentioning, they reminded us of the importance of security of supply and affordability of our energy, which to some extent, some critics have mentioned that we had taken these for granted. But the transformations triggered by the war and by Repower EU within a year have been really unprecedented. So starting already in October 2021, then an accelerated pace, the EU and member states took decisive measures to manage the impact of the crisis. We focused in particular on supporting households and businesses in very close cooperation with the member states. This was the short-term mission, which we successfully addressed together. So we took measures. It was many of them. You remember, I think every second week we had a package. We took measures to reduce gas and electricity consumption, to prepare for future winters, via storage obligations or setting up a joint gas purchasing instrument. We took measures to tax extraordinary benefits and channel them towards the vulnerable consumers. But also the EU took measures to find reliable alternative suppliers. And in addition, the Repower EU plan focused on energy savings, diversification of supplies, and an accelerated pace of rolling out renewable energies, with the aim of ending EU's dependency on Russian fuels. And I think the underlying idea is that every euro we invest in renewables and in clean energy is actually an investment in our security. So renewable energy all of a sudden also became an instrument for security of supply, which I think in the previous years had not been seen like this necessarily. And over a year, we have come already a long way. So overall, the EU phased out Russian gas by 2/3. This is more than what the International Energy Agency estimated possible a year ago. The first gas supplier to Europe is no longer Russia, it is Norway. And wind and solar generated a record 1/5 of all electricity, overtaking gas for the first time in the EU. And it's important to say also, given the topic of today, that while acting to tackle the crisis in the short term, we also ensured that we stay on track with the long-term Green Deal agenda and transition goals. So all EU measures had renewables, energy efficiency and savings, and corresponding investments at the center. Last year, carbon emissions dropped in Europe by 2.5%. And the 7th report of the State of the Energy Union, published in October last year, highlights also several other results in all the dimensions of the Energy Union. I would quote just a few of them. So the EU substantially surpassed the 2020 emission reduction targets, achieving a greenhouse gas reduction of 32%. However, this also includes the COVID pandemic, so emissions are expected to rebound in 2021, but still in a falling trend compared to pre-pandemic levels. The 2020 EU energy efficiency and renewable energy targets were overachieved. And renewables substituting fossil fuel corresponds to saving of around 34.5 billion euro in 2020. So this also shows the importance of developing renewables and clean energies. In addition, the EU remains a leader in clean energy research, but more public and private investments are needed, including scaling up and deployment to reinforce EU competitiveness. With this, moving ahead towards our view on decarbonization, we know, and the IPCC reports are a constant reminder that climate change is faster than our ability to adapt. So we need decisive climate action now. So after a year of emergency measures, I think there is time has come to implement our long-term strategies to achieve the EU's climate and energy goals. And while the final objective is set in the climate law to achieve decarbonization by 2050, some elements are still in the making. And I'm sure we have all followed the negotiations of the Fit for 55 package last year. They have advanced steadily, and agreements have been found on many of the climate-related proposals. So ETS, the Social Climate Fund, the Effort Sharing Regulation, LULUCF, and MSR have been provisionally agreed. Also the ETS aviation proposal, and very recently the Energy Efficiency Directive, where co-legislators agreed to reduce final energy consumption in 2030 by 11.7%. Negotiations are, as was mentioned already, still ongoing on other files, such as the Renewable Energy Directive, where the Commission had proposed a 45% target in 2030. Work on the 2040 target has also started, considering the obligation in the climate law, requiring the Commission to put forward a proposal within 6 months of the first global stocktake, which we know will happen at the COP end of this year. But before that, the governance framework of the Energy Union governance provides this year member states with the opportunity to integrate the more ambitious targets and the whole complex policy ecosystem related to decarbonization in the NECPs, where the update should happen by June, as Elena also mentioned. And we expect that the plans to provide a strategic vision and predictability needed to enable the clean energy transition and the required public and private investments. I think REPowerEU and the National Recovery and Resilience Plans are important elements that should flow into this updating exercise, which covers all the 5 dimensions of the Energy Union. Just to remind them, these are decarbonization, energy efficiency, the internal market, security of supply, research, innovation, and competitiveness. And I would add to these the recent Green Deal initiatives, such as the Net Zero Industry Act or the Critical Raw Materials Act, which aim at making decarbonization a key trigger for European industrial development, for more competitiveness and quality jobs in Europe. I will stop here and look forward to the debate. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much for this tour de force, and it's a lot that has happened, and it's a lot that is still happening. I think it's very important that, in a way, facing the double crisis, COVID, and immediately after that, the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the energy crisis, the EU has responded. So with all the measures that you have outlined, we are here in the spring of 2023 in a position in which we were only hoping we would be, I think, last autumn. And I think that's very important. And thank you very much for also mentioning the IPCC report that just came out and the need to take decisive climate action now. I've written down here that, yeah, climate change is moving faster than we can adapt. So, of course, it is important for things like the LTSs to be actually implemented in practice. And because the climate policy is still in debate, let's say like that, in Romanian society, I just wanted to maybe push you a bit more to give us a few more, not necessarily details, but opportunities that mitigating climate change can offer for countries like Romania through things like the Net Zero Industry Act, but not only. How can we make economic development and climate change mitigation work at the same time?
I think there are a lot of opportunities, although sometimes it's difficult to internalize everything, because an industrial revolution is ongoing, whether we like it or not. And I think the progress towards decarbonization is part of it. So the EU approach to energy transition allows economies to become smarter, I think, and more competitive, because in all our measures, what we propose is a better regulatory framework, investment in skills for people, which is reskilling, upskilling, or all the options are there, but also to invest in clean energy research, development, and innovation. So I think, just to put it in very few words, the energy transition allows national economies to leap into the future and to place themselves ahead of the curve in a global game, because it's not only Europe that is looking into decarbonization and the economic development going with it. So that the initiatives we last mentioned show that the Commission firmly believes that decarbonization goes hand in hand with economic development, with Europe's reindustrialization, with new value chains, with new skills, championing clean energy technologies. And I think all member states and also Romania is very much looking into this and taking these opportunities to develop new industries or redevelop industries in here. Also, strictly related to energy, Repower EU also offers a wide range of economic development opportunities, such as production of hydrogen or biomethane, or development of electricity storage. And I think while we provide and we work together with member states on the regulatory framework at EU level, I think member states need the strategic vision and the political courage and the political long-term commitment to take this path assertively. This brings me back to the IPCC reports. Assertiveness is needed because it won't be easy. It is a difficult process, and while not at odds one with the other, transition is disruptive and some economic sectors will not make sense anymore. But for this, the just transition is a key feature of the Green Deal agenda. And at the same time, we cannot afford to advance incrementally. We know this. The IPCC reports show it. Climate change will continue to happen and will get worse. And Commissioner Vestager said recently that we are the last generation really capable of doing something about it. So we should act now.
Thank you very much again for the incredibly clear message. We need courage in tackling climate change head on. And it does present the opportunity to basically leap into the future for all the new industries and value chains. And I think not just for yourself, but also for us, civil society organizations, the role is not just to communicate and bring solutions for the urgency to mitigate climate change, but also to present the opportunities offered. And that brings me a bit to Mihai Stoica, who's executive director of 2 Celsius, one of the most important environmental and climate NGOs in Romania. Mihai Stoica, please, could you give us a bit of insights about how you see the role of civil society in climate change mitigation efforts in Romania, but also if you have more specific recommendations for the planning efforts that we've heard about today.
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me. Again, I will keep it short, leave a little bit more time for questions. So I would say that civil society's voice is essential in this process. It is as essential as a watchdog on the progress that we're making on our climate ambitions, but also as a provider of input and finding solutions. And last but not least, to also keep an eye on the targets and make sure we're aligning our actions with what the science is saying. And for that, we use a variety of advocacy tools. It's no different than what everybody else is using, but we're trying to be basically a partner in a dialogue. So that's why we conduct research, we send feedback on policy proposals and participate in consultation processes. We're networking and coalition building, we're sending position letters, and we're lobbying backed by science and backed by our research and the tools that we're also developing. And so we're also trying to expose policymakers to experts and to know-how. We're never sure how effective this is. This is where I think we're very lucky to have EU institutions on our side most of the time, when they're not the ones that need convincing to step up action. But the past couple of years have shown us that the institutions, the EU institutions, have shown up and have stepped up actions. As an NGO in Romania, and you've given me the sort of the ingrate task to speak for all NGOs in Romania, and I'm not sure I can do that, but I want to say a little bit about the challenges that we're facing in engagement with policymakers, because I think this is very much a sticking point when it comes to Romania. I think, for example, that civil society organizations need to be engaged from the get-go in the policy-making process, because otherwise we're left with a very short time to react, and then it's not all too pleasant for the parties that are involved. Also, we a lot of times lack feedback on governmental positions, and on these makes us basically clueless on government thinking. And civil society organizations, like I said, should be partners in the policymaking process. We won't always see eye to eye, of course, but this is a part of the democratic process, and hard conversations need to be had in order to make progress. Another thing that affects our engagement is a lack of consistency in interactions with policymakers on certain issues. We have a meeting now and then, so this sort of leaves gaps in the inputs that we can provide in this process. So we're not the boogeyman. We can be the boogeyman, politically speaking, but this is already a sign that we're sidelined, and we're prepared to be more pushy in order to make our voices heard by any means. In terms of, what I could say to authorities and to policymakers for improving climate governance in Romania, I have to reiterate again, but I cannot stress this enough. This is so, so important. Look at the science and make decisions based on that. Climate governance should be in lockstep with the Paris Agreement. Like Mr. Goeke said earlier, the IPCC sixth assessment report, and like Mara said earlier, it's making it very clear that we need to step up our efforts this decade, or face a much more hostile world that we will not be able to manage. I have the feeling sometimes, and that we're still, in 1997, and the Kyoto Protocol has just been signed. Of course, we've been making steps lately with the energy crisis. It has accelerated. It has accelerated some the policy making and the transition, but sometimes it feels like we're still resisting. The challenges that we face today in mitigation efforts will seem peanuts, and that we'll have from the challenges that we have to deal with in a much more warmer world a few decades from now. And last year's record drought and the one that is announced for this year in Europe is a testament to that. I also want to say to authorities that they should be more ambitious on all fronts, including reforms. Like I just said, the climate realities we will need to face for our lack of ambition will be insurmountable. This is also an opportunity. So it's always, we're talking all the time about, you know, like, yes, we need to make sacrifice, we need to go through this, but we're not talking enough about the opportunities that the energy transition creates. And it's an opportunity for our economy and not a hindrance. It's an opportunity to be more competitive, to have better paying jobs by developing the value chains of the green economy, to improve the quality of life in cities by reducing harmful emissions from transport and industry. And these are just a few things. What we also need to do is have better correlation between plans and strategies. Policy tends to be all over the place in Romania. There's low coherence. This is improving, but we need to speed it up. For that, we need everybody to say row in the same direction. All too often, certain interests derail the steps that we make in the right direction. The derogation to allow building energy projects in protected area is a good example for that. What we also need to do, and this is again very, very important, is participate in international partnerships and international mechanisms. They provide the know-how and the much needed assistance for our ministries that are lacking sufficient capacity to deal with the challenges of the Green Deal. We also need to improve data consistency and data gathering methodologies. Lack of data or reliable data doesn't help the government in the decision-making process. And EPG and other organizations can attest to that. We also need wide-ranging consultations. Again, include all the stakeholders and include them in the discussions as early as possible, because most of the time consultations are too short. And let's say last but not least, don't spend money on false climate solutions. There is no time to play around. So investments should avoid fossil fuels as much as possible. I know, and we're aware of the realities that Romania encompasses from this point of view. We have failed to take steps a while ago, and now we're faced with, for example, closing off coal plants early, and this creates some sort of this creates a problem, and we are aware of that. And it's not necessarily a question of course, we are phasing out fossil fuels bit by bit, but we need to talk about how much. How much gas do we need? It's not a question of do we need it or not, it's how much. And in order to do that, we need to have those hard discussions. Use finance as much as possible to rebuild resilience in communities. Alleviate energy poverty with climate-friendly solutions is one example. And in the environment, and this means, we need to increase the surface of protected areas and improve management and connectivity for them. So I will stop here and I'll take your questions, Mihnea, if you have any.
Thank you very much, and very good intervention, I thought, in highlighting both what civil society can contribute to the decision-making process, but also the challenges, and I think very importantly here, more constant and transparent communication from the authorities is key. What I've also taken from your intervention is that the cost of inaction will always be higher than action. We don't have time to play around, which means that documents like the long-term strategy are essential basically to show the pathway, how to reach climate neutrality, and then to focus the investments on precisely what is needed. And as you said, not play around. I feel like a lot of the answers to some of the problems you've raised can be solved through things like a climate law that Ms. Mathieu described earlier. So let's get to work to that. Let's try to build some momentum for some comprehensive legislation for climate change in Romania. And organizations like yourself, which does fantastic work on climate change mitigation, a lot of specialized work on transport like ours, and so many other civil society organizations do have a lot to say here. I have 3 questions in the Q&A section. Ms. Popescu, if you are still with us, the first 2 of them are directed at you. I just wanted to make sure that you have them. So very quickly, a question from Ms. Radu Dudau, which is, will the LTS be available in time for the revision of the NECP? And if there will be an intermediate target for 2040? That's the LTS. And there's also a question from Alexandru Zuza for you, which is, what is the strategy based on the NECP regarding the closing of coal and the closing of maintenance of the nuclear reactor in 2027 for 2 years? Basically, what is the strategy of Romania to fill in that gap in that very sensitive period that will be 2026, 2027?
Yes, thank you for the questions. So LTS will be available, I hope by the end of this month. So then NECP, it's under revision, as I said, and we hope that in end of May, beginning of June, to start to make the public consultation and meeting with the stakeholders, with municipalities, and so on, like we presented last time. And related to we have intermediate target on 2040 on LTS, but I have no figures right now because we are concentrating now for NECP, because Minister of Energy in charge with NECP. We are interested in 2030 targets to be able to include as an input in NECP revision. Related to coal close of coal units, as I said, the terms for closing are intermediate, are different for different units. The last one will be closed in 2026, and we will have 990 megawatts in reserves until 2030. So related to refurbishment of Unit 1, the Unit 1 will be between starting with the 1st of January 2027. It's envisaged that the refurbishment works will take 2 years, not longer than 2 years, maybe 1 year and a half. Having the experience from other TANDU units refurbishment in Argentina and in Canada. The replacement of 700 megawatts from Chernobyl for those 2 years, and of this 5,000 megawatts of coal, it will be replaced by renewable and gas. This is why I explained, and I'm keeping explaining that we need this CCGT. I'm very sure, Mr. Stoica, that those money are not false investments, because if we not put in place something instead we not replace coal, and we are not we are not creating capacities to maintain the stability of the grid while we increase renewables. We are afraid that we can affect and impact the increasing of renewables. So our decarbonization plan will not be realized as we plan. So this I don't know if I answered.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a very quick follow-up. One of them with a question from Jürgen Reisner from the chat, which is, what role does Romania see for research and development? And what we're expecting from that from the NECP chapter, I think is very important to ask. And basically, if Romania only wants to import necessary technologies or to build them here. And very quickly, if you can, a quick update on when are we going to see the NECP progress report? Because it's also important to see how Romania has fared with the current plans, not just how it's developing new ones. But very short answers.
Yeah. So NECP progress report, which was supposed to be sent on 15th of March, we missed the target, will be elaborated. In fact, some of the reports have been already sent, but we have to finalize, and we want to finalize as soon as possible. I cannot tell you there are 23 annexes and 70 something tables. So it's a work in progress, because we had the LTS delayed, and all the governance structure of LTS and NECP was also delayed by different reasons. So we are delayed also delayed also with this progress report related to research and development. Yes, it's a chapter, it's a pillar in NECP, one of the 5 pillars of energy union. So it will be reflected. I cannot tell you now how best it will be reflected. I hope, as you all hope, that we will be more, because now there is a strategy on research and development. On how we elaborated our first NECP, we had not such a strategy. There are some progress from the research institutes which are involved now with different European institutes in different research programs. So I don't have accurate data now, but hopefully in the revision of NECP, research and development will be better reflected than it was in previous one.
We do as well. I'll dare ask a very quick question as well to Ms. Mathieu, if she has any insights about how Germany is tackling its strategy for R&D in its strategic plans, and whether there's any exchange that could help Romanian authorities in that regard as well. Ms. Mathieu?
Thank you. Well, I think informal exchange from the colleagues of the energy department, they welcome this in any case, but they're first working also on the update. We have to give this plan until the end of June, and that's what we intend to do for the moment. But informal exchange also at this stadium, because we're quite early also, we have to submit draft. It's not the final one. So after the draft submissions, I think that some exchange are welcome. It's most of the time it's with the direct neighbors so country neighbors, because of the grids, also connections, which is a big question. But I think every bilaterals could be helpful. As I have the mic, many thanks. I really wanted also to highlight, to make a light point on the aspect of the solidarity, because I hear all the financing and all the challenge we are talking here, especially regarding the encouraging but challenging situation of Romanian. Don't forget that every MS is not alone. We are EU, and there is a lot of instruments also mentioned today. The MOD funds, the RRP still there, the Climate Social Fund within the Fit for 55. These all contribute to design a just transition within this Green Deal. I just wanted to highlight that, and that a country like Germany, don't forget that.
All right, yeah, thank you very much. Before I hand back to Radu, I just want to very quickly give also the word to Ms. Ozmen, because she has stayed with us until the end. I know there's been a lot of conversation on hydrogen, and there is legislation that you're working on. So yeah, if you have any thoughts.
Thank you, Mihnea. Thank you. And just I want to sustain our position. When we discuss about the hydrogen, because yes, hydrogen with low carbon is very important for Romania in the transition, and not just for Romania. I have discussed, and also in the east of Europe, and according with the new perspective from the European Union, it's important to use in the transition the hydrogen which we produce with the low, and they have this he's low carbon now. Why? Because I discussed today with some stakeholder who explained me the challenge. It will be a challenge from them to use in the future just green hydrogen, because it's important how we make the transportation, if we have the possibility to offer the perspective from not just for industry, but for some region which will become vulnerable. When we discuss also about the energy efficiency, and I'm happy because Madam Mathieu explained so well the situation. Yes, I already said we made the implementation of that directive, and of course we are involved to update our legislation. But it's not just about legislation. We should discuss also what we are doing with the vulnerable region of geographical, what we have in Romania, in the rural, what we do in the villages, because there will be a challenge also if we want to increase the the energy efficiency from that building. Also, Mr. Stoica, you say so well. And I like that we need to protect the area, like let's see, like Danube Belt, and what we are doing with the buildings, they have the buildings where and that buildings have different architectures. Also, I don't see any perspective now from European Union to preserve, how we will preserve that area. For this reason, yes, here in the Parliament we are involved in this project, but I sustain what Mrs. Popescu said. We need to use low carbon hydrogen in the transition, because when we discuss about that, it's not just about what the countries from west of Europe are doing. It's important to have a balance between west and east, and to understand also the perspective of each country. Thank you for.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Mann, for bringing this. I'm sure we can have separate conversations on the challenges of energy efficiency, on different production methods for hydrogen and their respective merits. I also want to very quickly acknowledge some of the comments that were given here. One of them, which was by Clara Bosch, which is if Romania supports energy generation as an important part of climate-friendly mitigation. I think you can get a very unequivocal answer in the Romanian NECP, and probably in the upcoming NECP, about the role that Romania gives to nuclear. And also to the comment from Raul Kazan, which brings another topic which is perhaps suited for an entire conversation, which is strategic litigation. and how NGOs engage in litigation with the government to push ambition, and what role does that have? And he reminds about some key networks there in the Q&A that Romanian NGOs can join to enhance their voice here domestically as well. Radu, with that, I will give you back the floor to sum up the conversation. Yeah, thank you for waiting.
Thank you, Mihnea, for the great job in moderating a really productive panel. I'll just start the closing remarks by thanking again the speakers in the opening segment, Mr. Goeke, certainly Oana, Ozmen, and Cristina-Dora Raiciu. And then with respect to the panel, I think a lot of substantive stuff was said about not just the role of science and the relationship of governmental planning and governance with civil society, but yeah, insight about the planning process ongoing now in Romania, LTS and NECP. I'll use the privilege of these closing words to refer to one particular point. I think it's relevant and was very nicely argued for by Elena. We are indeed in a situation where we have to plan for our energy mix for 2030 in terms of decarbonization, but certainly also in terms of sufficient capacity. I take the argument of Mihai that we are currently paying a lot of costs of inaction in past years, but then things are as they are right now. And we have to deal with two things, indeed, retiring the lignite fleet mostly by 2026. A lot of capacity will pass into conservation, and then the refurbishment works 2 years long at least at the unit 1 of the Chernobyl, the nuclear plant. So this, I think it's well argued for, and I think we have to accept. However, we at EPG have been worrying about potential overshoot in terms of investment in gas power plants. I mean, just by adding up the recent announcements in the press for Mihnea, for everything that comes with the restructuring plan with Oltenia, all the municipal cogeneration, gas power plants, all that. I mean, we're standing a clear risk of overshooting and sunking valuable capital and having to deal afterwards in the horizon of 2040 with a renewed problem. Basically, what today coal means for 2030, we'll have to deal with potentially with gas for 2040. So while we accept that a lot is necessary, I'm guessing the more concrete questions I want to pose, we need a clear-cut analysis. What exactly is the level of gas investments that we need for power generation capacity? And I suppose the analysis done just these days with the scenarios is going to be helpful. We need to have a clear-cut representation, okay? How much gas capacity we still need to build. And lacking this, I think there are all sorts of impulses and interests in our energy system that will go for as much capacity in various projects as possible. So yeah, I think this is a challenge for the energy planners. Having said that, we'll have to leave the discussion at that. Again, we'd like to thank EUKI for their great support in organizing this event, and to the German Ministry of Economy. And finally, there are three colleagues at EPG that put a lot of work into this: Caterina Oproiu, Oana Iosip, Costin Postoiu. I want to acknowledge their efforts as well. Thank you all for participating. Your questions and comments were also very valuable. We'll stay in touch, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
See you soon.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.